Hello world, my name is Klaus Rostel and I'm doing 100 innovation keynotes in 100 days. Today is number 95. Today's title is Innovation Challenge, the Power of Story. Now, let me tell you a story. That's where we'll start. It's a story of how innovation always builds on the past. It begins with a horse's ass. This is a horse. Obviously, it's its ass. This is a railroad. What do those two have to do with each other? Well, turns out that U.S. railroads are 4 feet, 8.5 inches, standard gauge. Now that's roughly 143 centimeters. Because they were built by British engineers, at least the original ones were built by British engineers when railroads came to the U.S. in the 19th century. Because UK railroads were 4 feet, 8.5 inches. They were also built by British engineers, surprisingly enough. They were built on British roads, which were in turn built on Roman roads, which were, you guessed it, built by Roman engineers. And Roman engineers, they built their roads to be 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Why? Because the standard width of a Roman road was 2 horses' asses. Therefore, you have 2 horses' asses being the width of the U.S. railroads. 2,000 years between those first roads being laid down in England by Roman engineers and that becoming the standard for American railroads. Innovation always builds on the past. Thank you. Okay, wait. Small problem. We're not entirely done yet. Because it turns out, when you Google that story, there's some stuff in it that apparently isn't completely true. Now, neither is it completely false. And that's where it gets interesting. The U.S. railroads in the 19th century apparently, when you dig a little deeper, find out they had more than 20 different standards, of which 4 feet, 8.5 inches was just one of them. It just happened to be that after the Civil War, this became the standard gauge. It gets even better than that, because Slate.com in 2019 did an interview with Bill Holohan. And you're thinking, Bill Holohan? Well, he's of course the guy who tweeted about this and it went viral. Now, it turns out that Bill, Mr. Holohan himself, he wasn't too sure about the facts in this case. He said that Pompeii's roads, which are pretty well preserved, again, this is according to him, they are 4 feet, 8.5 inches in width. Now, is that coincidence? He says it could have been true. Maybe it's true. We don't know. And to make it even more interesting, he said, well, maybe subconsciously, the British engineers doing the U.S. railroads at that gauge that later became that standard were doing it without thinking about it. Maybe they were following that standard, not because they decided actively to do it the Roman way, but subconsciously. And you've got to love that explanation because it might be true, might also not be. It's pretty hard to kind of point at, but it also illustrates something that's very human. We're sometimes guided by the weirdest stuff in our rationalizations. Without getting too Daniel Kahneman about it, let's just say they're sometimes a bit off. So, Holohan also says, and this to me is something I love, he says he was just having a bit of fun. To quote the article, he, one, doesn't understand why people got all worked out about it, and, quoting directly from the interview, he says, also, or he says, and so, what the hell? And I love that. Because what is the truth here? We don't know. We probably never will know. There's one thing that's certain. That is, it's a good story. It's a lovely story. And because it's a good story, we want it to be true. It should be true. It would be nice if it was true. So we accept it pretty uncritically, and even when we are offered evidence to the contrary, we kind of hold on to it. After all, The basic story, the kind of the proto story is true. Innovation does build on the past. And even if this isn't true, even if this is just random fact and the Pompeii U.S. railroads are not really linked, there's lots of stuff out there that is true and that could be like this. So the lesson, what's the lesson? What's the innovation lesson here? Why did I make a keynote about it? Well, first off, it's that a good story is not nearly as interesting as the truth, because a good story is simple, it flows, it's lovely, it connects, it makes sense. The truth, it's complex, it's annoying, it's messy, it's inconvenient, as some might say. Sometimes that makes innovation a really tricky business, because you are always building on the past, but sometimes the past you're building on is about as stable as standing on the water without a boat. Or in other words, not that stable. Think. And I really mean it this time. Thank you.